Alright, so How to Train Your Dragon is the latest in a long line of animated movies that have just been getting that literal copy and paste into live action treatment, and it really feels like we're living out some reoccurring nightmare with how often this has been happening. I mean, nowadays it feels like you can't throw a baseball without it colliding with a film studio head that is just sitting there fantasizing about all of that sweet, sweet box office money that would go into his pocket if he just remade some random beloved classic. So with all the situations like these, it begs the question, did this really need to exist? And I'm someone that always says no, and in a general sense, I still believe that. But I might have been wrong about this particular movie. How to Train Your Dragon tells the story of an ancient threat endangering both Vikings and dragons alike on the Isle of Berk, but the friendship between Hiccup, an inventive Viking, and Toothless, a Night Fury dragon, becomes the key to both species forging a new future together. So hopefully this is a judgment-free zone, because I need to admit, I have no emotional connection to this franchise whatsoever. I know that might seem crazy, but I just never watched them when I was younger. So I took it upon myself to make sure I was familiar with the franchise and watch the animated versions before this live action one came out, and I totally understand what all the hubbub's about. Like, the fandom around these movies makes so much sense now, and I just had no idea what I was missing. Fast forward to when this live action version was announced, and I frankly just didn't give a shit about it. I mean, obviously I had no familiarity with the franchise before that, but in a more general sense, I just think all of these are soulless cash grabs. I mean, I kind of pride myself in a sick way off of only ever seeing one single Disney live action remake. My wife dragged me kicking and screaming to go see Beauty and the Beast back in like 2017. And while I didn't think that it was the worst thing I've ever seen, it kind of just confirmed what the rest of these were going to be. And this is the first one ever done by DreamWorks, but keeping that in mind, let's get to the nitty gritty. Did this really need to be made, or is it just the most expensive advertisement on the face of the planet for a brand new theme park that just opened? And yeah, it kind of is the most expensive advertisement on the face of the planet for a brand new theme park that just opened, but it's a shockingly good one at that. Lock me up and throw away the key, man, because even though this project pretty much follows the original film beat by beat, I had a really good time with it. When it comes to the story they decided to go with this time around, what you're expecting is exactly what you're going to get with this movie. Like, this is probably going to go down as the most faithful live action adaptation in the history of the medium. Whether that's a good thing or not is kind of up for you to decide, because it's a double-edged sword, right? On one side of the coin, it really honors the original source material. Big reason for that is because Dean DeBlois, the guy that directed the original animated movie, he's back again in the director's chair for this new remake. But on the flip side, it doesn't really do anything new with the opportunity that it's given. It takes the expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as literally as you possibly can, because it's essentially a shot-for-shot remake of that first movie. But for someone like me that didn't grow up with a crazy attachment to these movies, it didn't bother me at all. I'm sure when Disney decides to give the live action treatment to something like Hercules, believe me, I'll be the first one in the streets riding with my pitchfork and my torch. But How to Train Your Dragon still found a ton of different ways to win me over, and the story here still has all that same amount of wonder to it. When it comes to the performances in the film, Mason Thames does a really solid job of anchoring this central role of Hiccup. I think he's got to be one of the best up-and-coming young actors in Hollywood today, and he makes you care about this character's journey from beginning to end. I will say, though, his haircut is just as bad as you remember it being from the original movie. They must not have scissors on the Isle of Berk or something, because that shit is nasty. Gerard Butler does some good work in here too, and I feel like he's a super rare example of a dude that perfectly embodies the voice role of the animated film, but then it's also a match made in heaven to have him be the live-action counterpart as well. I mean, ditch the pointy helmet and the beard, and I'm sure that's just how he acts in his everyday life. The dynamic between these two characters as father and son is really the emotional core of this entire narrative, and I'm gonna catch some flack for this, but having it more fleshed out in the live-action version, it did more for me than it did in the original movie. When it comes to the cons, I think you might lose a little bit of the heart within the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless, just because they can't be as goofy in real life as they can be in the animated format. And then when it comes to the gang of the other dragon hunters, I just didn't find them as chummy or funny this time around, but something's gotta give. Let's get into talking about the visual enhancements that come along with making this a live-action version of this story, because at the end of the day, that's really the only massive change when it comes to comparing this to the original animated format. All of the dragons that you're gonna see over the course of this movie are pretty much looking as great and realistic as they possibly can be. I mean, they're all gross, they're bumpy, they're scaly. The only one that doesn't look completely realistic is Toothless, and that's for obvious reasons. Gotta sell that merchandise, baby. And I think outside of a couple of evident but rare green screen heavy shots that you're gonna see over the course of the narrative, they really put that budget to good use. This entire project is handled with care, which firmly, for me, steers it away from that soulless cash grab territory. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the same director this time around as it was with the original animated movie, so it kind of makes sense that he would nail a bunch of these aspects again with the live-action remake, but I was still pretty surprised with how invested I got in the whole thing. I mean, if I'm being real for a second, that first scene where Hiccup flies Astrodon Toothless and that entire final epic battle sequence pretty much had me levitating out of my IMAX seat, and if that's wrong, I don't want to be right, brother. Overall, guys, How to Train Your Dragon is a really good live-action remake. If we're being honest, it does absolutely nothing new when compared to the original and doesn't stray from the source material at all, so if you're looking for an experience like that, you'll probably be disappointed, but every aspect of this film is handled with so much care and the story translates so well to live action that I ended up having a blast with it from start to finish. Definitely a rare high point in the live action remake landscape, but it looks like we got lucky this time, baby. How to Train Your Dragon gets a Sully score of 4 stars. So that's my review of the latest live-action remake. What do you think the best one we've ever gotten is? I've literally seen none of them, so I have to go with this movie, but let me know in the comments below what you think. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.